Everybody, this is Carl back again for another comic book spoiler review, and I finally got it wrapped up. I want to get into some more X-Men, the team this time, and I want to get back into like the at least because I did the like the or like 70s ish comic of the giant size X-Men, which is up on the channel if you want to check out my review of that comic. But now we're going to head into like the 90s, early 90s interpretation of the X-Men with the original 5 team made up of Cyclops, Beast, Jean Grey, Angel, and Iceman. And I was trying, a reason I picked this and I found this because I was trying to find a solo comic dedicated solely for Professor Xavier, and I couldn't find one, which is kind of weird. You'd think like after all these years there would have been like a solo story, akin to something like Magneto's graphic novel that I did a review of, which you can check out on my channel. I just thought it was kind of weird. Like, why is Professor Xavier don't have a solo comic of his own after all these years? It's kind of weird. But I came across this, and it's like, oh, I read a couple of issues of this, and it's like, no, this is kind of interesting. So I added to the list and wanted to include it into like before we get into those big major X-Men events, I want to get into the early years of the original 5. And before we get into it, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this with your friends. Which member of the X-Men is your favorite? And of course, I still want to go into Professor Xavier's powers and abilities, because it's still kind of sort of he played a major part. He's the Cyclops is the leader. He's still like the leader of the X-Men by extension. And so I want to count this as like learning his powers. I want to include this because I've never gotten around to doing that. So Professor Xavier is an alpha level mutant, said to possess the most powerful brain in existence and to be the world's greatest telepath, possessing vast psionic powers. He's a telepath. He's able to read minds and project his own thoughts into the minds of others within a radius of 250 miles on Earth. With extreme effort, he can greatly extend that radius. When synced with Cerebro or Cerebra, he can connect to every mind on the planet. After he was thrown in the Macaron crystal, it has not only restored his mutation, but made his telepathy more powerful than it has been previously, thereby making him the world's most powerful telepath once again. He can make telepathic illusions, telepathic cloak, disguising his or anybody else's appearance in the eyes of other people, mind link, telepathic camouflage, mind blast, mind control, mind possession, mind alteration, mental amnesia, psychic wave manipulation. Xavier's mental talents are such that he can give his psionic power enough physical substance to affect the material world through his telepathy. Having used this faculty of his mutant power to KO a sentinel, knocking it a great distance away from himself with the power of his thoughts made real alone. Mental shield, psionic blast, mental detection, mind transfer, absorb information, ability to quickly process and store information by mental transference, telepathic learning, omnilingual, because it's like abilities, he can able to communicate with anybody regardless of their language barriers. Astral projection is a big one. He used that quite often. And of course, telekinesis. Professor Xavier has shown low-level telekinesis, having been potent enough to disrupt high-end technological equipment with enough effort on his part. Though seemingly no longer existent, they were apparently key to his genetics, as Cassandra Nova has the same ability and is basically a clone of Xavier. While in the newer, younger body and empowered by Cerebro-like helmet, Charles would exhibit psionic mind over matter facilities, refined enough to beckon a flesh drive on Mystique's person into his hand with a gesture. Other abilities: he's a natural genius. Xavier is a leading authority on genetics, mutations, and psionics. He possesses considerable expertise in other life sciences. He is highly talented in devising equipment for utilization and enhancing psionic powers. Xavier is also quite the masterful tactician and strategist, effectively evaluating situations and devising swift responses. He has, on numerous occasions, even fashioned long-term operations as complex as those of adversaries such as Sinister, Magneto, and Apocalypse. Military training: he served in the United States military, secretly employing his abilities to specialize in search and rescue missions. Expert fighter: in his travels in the East, he became a proficient hand-to-hand combatant and gained knowledge of pressure points. Weaknesses: dark side. Xavier was shown to have a dark side, a part of himself that he struggled to suppress. Perhaps the most notable appearance of this was the entity Onslaught, which was a physical manifestation of that dark side. We'll do the Onslaught event. I'm pretty sure it's going to be like the next, well, not the next one, but the next couple of comic reviews I'll be doing. Onslaught will be, coming close. So look forward to that. Onslaught was created in the most violent act Xavier claimed to have done, erasing the mind of Magneto. Once the X-Men fought images of the original team, which had been created by what Xavier said was his evil self, who would use his powers for personal gain and conquest, which he said he was normally able to keep in check. In other instances, Xavier was shown to be secretive and manipulative. During the battle against Onslaught, the X-Men found Xavier's files, the Xavier Protocols, which detailed how to kill many of the characters should the need ever arise, such as if they went rogue. It's very akin to, like, Batman's files on how to neutralize members of the Justice League. Very similar stuff. Also, it was revealed that when Xavier realized that the Danger Room had become sentient, he kept it trapped and experimented on it for years, an act that Cyclops called the oppression of a new life and equated it to humanity's treatment of mutants. Later still, a depowered Xavier was forced to admit that he had sent a group of hastily trained young mutants and carelessly sent them to Krakoa to save the original X-Men, resulting in their deaths. Because one of the mutants was Cyclops' brother Vulcan, Xavier erased Cyclops' memories of the event. He further manipulated the rescue team of new X-Men by making them think the meaningless noises the island made were unintelligible speech, evident that the island was alive, to match the new memories he had given Cyclops. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, Xavier, had done some shady stuff in his, quest for unity, but yeah. And people always give Professor Xavier a lot of crap, sometimes rightly so, but name a character that haven't had a foul up before, and it's kind of like, anybody who give Professor Xavier crap shouldn't throw stones, considering, how many times like, Cyclops went bad before, Jean Grey, Phoenix, Dark Beast, you know, it's like, it's plenty. Oh, and then, got Captain America with the whole Hydra cap guy, you know, uh, so there's plenty of heroes that have effed up many times, even like somebody like, Carol Danvers, Iron Man, definitely plenty of times. So it's like, it's like not fair. And even to this day, Hank Pym gives a whole lot of grief with the whole Ultron situation and hitting his wife that one time, even though that was effed up. But it's just like, but oh, Charles is the asshole. So it's like, I wouldn't be so quick to, like, judge him too harshly. Anyway, we begin the story where Jean first arrived to the X Mansion after Professor Xavier discovered her, and she, it's her, first day meeting everybody. And here's the thing: it's often been mentioned how young these original five are, especially somebody like Beast, and it's like, I mean, at the bare minimum, they're like what, like 22, but the way they drawn looks like they're, late 20s at, as grace as I can give it. It's like, y'all can at least be in your late 20s. Y'all talking about kids. It's the same thing with like whole Scooby-Doo. It's like, it's like you meddling kids, but it's like they're not kids. They're well in their 20s, man. It's like they're definitely not kids, but they're still young in experience and learning how to master their abilities, training in the danger room and everything like that. And this is the first meet cute moment of Jean and Scott, when he have his little Velma Dinkley moment where it's like, my glasses, I can't find my glasses, that kind of thing. And she helps him find his ruby quartz glasses, and of course he's like just starstruck. And of course throughout this adventure, oh, and by the way, this is written, this 18 issue run is written by Fred Schiller, artist Jan Dursima. So we have this first little meet cute moment, but throughout this run, they think to themselves about, like, they're obviously spinning with each other, but neither one is making like the first move. I thought by the end of it all, we finally have some kind of confession of their, love for each other, but doesn't happen here. But it's seated. It's kind of, I mean, it's all right at first, but I guess it's around that time when you kind of dragged it, kind of like will they won't they thing kind of along, and that was a kind of like a thing back in the 90s. Especially, I blame the TV show Friends, where they Ross and Rachel kind of situation, even though it's existed long before Friends. But I'm just saying that really kind of hit home to everybody. It's like, wow, this kind of thing is like kind of annoying when it happens, and I think like that's when the people kind of first took notice of that trope, and they stretched it out. It isn't too bad, because you kind of want to savor that for the right moment, I guess. But I kind of wish they at least somebody like put a step forward. I mean, it won't be Scott because he's kind of like a kind of stern, stoic kind of guy. And he's like, he's team leader and probably inappropriate, because the whole like, power dynamic kind of thing. And even back then we understood about like certain things, but at the same time, if both participants are consenting adults and they actually have feelings for each other, then it isn't all that bad. But I would have cared for at least one of them to make a step, like Jean at the very least would have like uh uh trying to make some time, like, hey, like, I'm the going into the city shopping, do you want to come with me, Scott? Something like that. Just make that little step to give him an inkling that, oh, she actually want to spend time with me. So then she meets like the rest of the group, and woof, God, man, I just like, I'm surprised at Hank, who acts like a, I guess, because the time this was, being drawn and written, he, is kind of act like a, like I said, they say like, oh, they're young kids, but it's like, dude, you look like you're, about to hit 31 or something like that, and you're, you know, you hopping around, and you're, I'm glad he got checked immediately, not just by Gene, but Warren, also, where she just, hops over and just, without consent, hopped over and give her a kiss on her cheek. It's like, what a lovely little lass, and it's like, may I bequeath to you a kiss, young lady. It's like, dude, and she quickly like use her powers to twirl him around and toss him on the couch. And Warren checks him like, dude, it's like not cool. What the fuck is wrong with you? And it's like, yeah, and it shows like, and I like it here to show that Jean is not some, a damsel, that weak damsel thing. She can handle her own, but she's not, you know, also at the same time not going to sit there and chastise Warren for trying to stand up for her too, and also check, his fellow man, like, dude, that's not cool. What the fuck is wrong with you? So it shows that two things can't happen at the same time, and like a girl's not going to be total girl boss and yell at the guy who's trying to help with the situation and checking his fellow man, but she also not too weak where she can't check him at the same time as well. So I really like that, and it's kind of weird for Hank McCoy of all people. You'll think it would be like somebody like Bobby who will do something that dumb, but somebody like Hank, as a scientific guy, you would think he'll have more of a mature attitude compared to everybody else. It's very weird. Unbecoming of Hank McCoy. But I guess he's a kid, and it's like, kid my ass. I kind of wish they kind of drawn them better to represent. I mean, the artist should have like really, they're young, but they look like they're in their mid-20s. It's like, come on. So she's getting used to, because she was like the only girl on the team at the time. It's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure it would get kind of annoying being the only girl in a house full of dudes and all the testosterone running around. I mean, she's, greatly drawn, I gotta say. But the mask, I am not used to them having masks. Of course, there's on a time where secret identities was a big thing, especially for somebody like the mutants, the X-Men, who are chastised for being mutants, and harassed, and harassed by racism and everything like that. They want to make sure they can live out normal lives outside of being superheroes. But later on in the run, you see Beast getting harassed, many times. It's like a mask is not going to cover every doggone thing. And it's like, what's the point of having a mask? And how anybody will know if these people were mutants? Because you would not, they could have easily got their power from other sources. Like, how can people think like, oh, somebody like, I don't know, Hawkeye? Like, Hawkeye could be, because they're immune the way he can, shoot his shots in an incredible way that not any other person wielding a bow can do. He's not, but people can easily say, because they do something that's above and beyond the norm, they can without the whole knowing about Captain America's backstory, people could easily say, oh, he could be a mutant. But of course, they all know about the whole. I don't know how widely known the secret soldier serum thing is known to the general public. But if not, people could easily say, oh, Captain America must be a mutant. Because like how anybody with superpowers, they could easily cast mutant or inhuman at minimum. You don't know unless you know how they got their powers. They can say Captain Marvel could be a mutant. You don't know. Now, how would a general public know? But they wearing masks, which I think was, I don't know. I'm not cool with the whole mask thing. It bothers me. Not too much, but it's like I'm just used to them always not having masks, even though they have coordinated clothes most of the time. Well, during the nights, a few of them have like matching color coded outfits aside from something like like Gambit, or like Deadpool or somebody like that who has their own little thing going on. The whole mask thing is kind of pointless. So they get a call that Magneto is attacking, which is akin to something like from the 90s X-Men TV show, which I'm pretty sure the show got off of this situation, where he's attacking a military installation and trying to, set off like, missiles, and the X-Men show up to put a stop to it. Of course, he ends up getting away, and slowly but surely he's building his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Horrible branding. I don't know why he call it Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Of course, from time to time he says Brotherhood of Mutants, but after a while he just starts giving it its true label, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And it's like, so you're acknowledging what you're doing is bad. That's what evil means. And it's like, God, it's like terrible branding. And yeah, you can see like they're, kind of novices here. Well, most of them. Jean Grey especially, because she struggles. I mean, we all know Jean Grey to be one of the most powerful telepaths and telekinetics in the world. But it's kind of jarring here because it's like, we know her at her best. You'd be hard pressed to remember Jean Grey when she was new at this, where she struggled to lift two people at the same time or split her, mental focus into multiple things. Nowadays, she can, lift an oil tanker with her mind while at the same time carrying a group of people on a bus with her, on the other side at the same time without, that much of a struggle. So it's like, wow, this is early days. This is like, X-Men Year One kind of situation. But then they go onto this other adventure where they're dealing with this guy named Vanisher who's just got teleporting powers. As a matter of fact, speaking of teleporting powers, there's one moment where Xavier meets up with Moira McTaggart, who going through like 3 files of potential other members of X-Men. Got pictures of Storm, Colossus, and Nightcrawler. Because so he's easily like still like wanting to recruit more people. So I'm glad they was still like on top of the mind, but it's not about like them at the moment. At least they're not there where recruiting those guys just yet. But this mutant Vanisher is using his powers to rob people, and then eventually try to rob military codes in order to sell to the highest bidder. And of course they try to stop him, but his powers is like kind of tricky. It's like trying to stop somebody who can easily teleport out of any situation. but thanks to Professor Xavier stepping in, he managed to subdue him and also cut his connection to his powers. It wouldn't be the first time Professor Xavier has to do this to people, especially if they pose such a danger to his X-Men or the world around him. If he'd rather not do it, but more often than not, he's have to push that button essentially in order to stop a potential threat. So he can act. He mentally he's tried to access that part of his brain to gain to trigger his power, but can't do it. But I imagine that's temporary. But I never heard of a guy named Vanisher before. Wonder if he's ever been like a thing since this. Yeah, it looks like he has been a thing. Yep. And he worked with Abigail Brand in Sword. So yeah, he's been around. I guess kind of like a good guy now. I guess. Um. Mm, all right, I just had to check and see because it seems like one of those kind of one-off bad guys that you probably ever see again. But no, he was one of his X-Men's oldest foes. But then we meet Blob. Just call me Blob. And kind of like in the X-Men Evolution when we first meet Blob there, Cyclops is at the circus and sees this guy being mocked and ridiculed at a circus and turned to a sideshow. There's many characters in not just Marvel Comics but DC Comics too that's been like made to sideshow freaks. Like Killer Croc has been one, Nightcrawler's definitely been one, and you got Blob here. I think Penguin in some occasions maybe. Uh, uh, in the noir Marvel universe, Green Goblin in that universe was a sideshow freak in his youth because of his green kind of goblinish skin. So it's like, yeah, there's been a lot of that in comics. So Blob is mocked for his obesity, and of course I went over his powers before, but it's just like his mutation is his body fat, and it's like it's extremely durable, and it's kind of like controlling his own kind of gravitational pull or central gravity or something like that. It's very hard for him to move him if he doesn't want to be moved. And so uh Scott and Xavier and try to uh, get him involved with the X-Men, see if he's probably like a potential ally. but because of how he was bullied horrendously and then put into like a sideshow and furtherly mocked, of course, that mentally he's just like, you know, just checked out morality wise, he's checked out. Uh, and of course, he now is high on, it's like high on power now. Like, oh, I'm a mutant. That means I can do whatever I want. And Professor Xavier like, no, you cannot just do whatever you want. So he just like, after this, I'm just gonna go out and just, take what I want and do what I want. And Xavier has to have them stop. And of course, he's like, knocking them all aside and eventually, because the X-Men just, ill prepared to stop somebody like this. So he just bounced and decided to take over the Garnies as like, the ringmaster who's trying to, who's been messing with him this whole time. Fred Dukes is like, bow. It's like, I ain't gonna listen to you no more. And guys, follow me. Like, why would they follow him? But they so easily led. And so it's like he's pretty much running his own circus, essentially. It's kind of like the Penguin Batman Returns, where it's like, he got all these carnies following him on this crazy train. So they head back to the X Mansion, which, Xavier is trying to keep secret as much as possible to avoid any threat to his students. That's what he's worried about a lot of the time. And that's the whole point with the whole secret identities and stuff like that. So the X-Men are trying to stop all these carny folk from getting inside the mansion. But with the help of I believe Cerebro he was using, Xavier I think he was using Cerebro because he has to get inside everybody's mind. And so he erased the memory, the memory in Fred Deuce's mind of the X-Men, the location of the mansion, all that stuff. And also the Carnies erased their knowledge of what transpired and had them go right back to the carnival. And so now, like, Dukes is like, back to being like a sideshow, and it's kind of like sad. You feel bad for a lot of the mutants, even sometimes the bad ones, because they've been mocked and ridiculed for things that is out of their control. They're born with a certain thing that makes them them. But eventually, Fred Dukes will remember, and he will make a one last return pretty soon. Now, we meet up with Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, which I covered their solo stories up on the channel, which you can check out. And Xavier is trying to recruit them to be part of his X-Men. Of course, they politely turn him down because they don't want to be caught up in any kind of war. They live in a peaceful life. But the townsfolk don't know what they really are. And of course, they live in kind of like a backwards, almost like, Renaissance level of era or something like that. Like they live in just like a village town. And a kid who's like going out sledding, was about to crash, and thanks to Wanda's powers, saved the kid's life. But they all assume that she is a witch, and later on that night they try to murder her and Pietro. Pietro tried to run them out the town, but he gets tripped up, and they only save because of Magneto, who offers them a place in his brotherhood and safe from uh, the racism and bigotry of people. And of course, they keep playing fast and loose. I don't know why they keep doing it. The Marvel industry, comic book industry, keeps playing fast and loose on whether or not Magneto and Pietro. Whether or not Magneto is the father of Pietro and Wanda, and just easier, and people just easily glom to the idea and comfortable with the idea. And more often than not, they look like him, especially Pietro. It's like, yeah, they're his kids. Leave it be. Stop playing like messing around with it. At least tell the writer stop messing around with this kind of notion and say like, no, these are my kids, and be done with it. Because the average, moviegoer or the average comic book reader might not know this, and you might confuse them, and just so easy to say like, yeah, these are my kids. Yeah, from because he had like 3 kids or 4 kids. His first one died. He had Polaris by another woman, and then had twins by another woman. So he had like at least a few relationships. And of course, Magneto being Magneto, he will eventually tip his hand and abuse the relationship he had with these kids, while he could just because he use them as he cares for them, but that doesn't supersedes his thirst for essentially conquering the human race, because of what happened to him in the Nazi camps and everything like that, growing up in all that horrific ordeal. His need for like his mutant people to be top of the food chain supersedes any connection he has with his children, at least back then. Here and there back then, because he cares, but it's like he doesn't want them to undermine him at the same time, and he lords that his saving them from the mob, lords over them to expect complete cooperation to its fullest, no matter what he does, no matter how crazy he takes things. And they end up meeting like Toad. This is like a illusionist. I forgot his doggone name. I think that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. So then Magneto takes over this island, Santa something, and he's planning on using this kind of like a big laser thing in order to, at least I think that's in like a different issue, to enhance his magnetic powers in order to kind of like a death laser in a sense. And so the X-Men go there to try to stop Magneto, whoever his machinations might be. And of course, they end up meeting up with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And so they liberated the island from Magneto's control, but before he dipped, he left a bomb going ticking down, hoping to just be done with the X-Men from any future interference. Of course, Wanda and Pietro, they're very tight, and they don't, they will willingly fight. They don't resort to all out murder. So when Wanda's like freaking out, like, dude, they're just kids. You can't just leave them to die like that. And so Pietro runs back quickly, disarms the bomb, and leaves, leaving the X-Men understand, like, Pietro and Wanda, despite them other future run-ins with them where they're adversaries, they know that they're not completely down with what Magneto is going along with. Uh, 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 we had like a moment with Jean's parents, visiting, just check up on their daughter, and I put this panel up because I know it was the 90s and a lot of fashion was kind of uh, extravagant, I guess, or just kind of a little out there. But why he looks like he dressed like the Trickster from DC Comics, the Hank here. That vest is like ugly. He's just like a little clown. But Magneto laid a trap for the X-Men by having Toad dress, put it on like a normal looking mask and participating in this kind of it's not the Olympics, so it might as well be something like the Olympics. It's being broadcast, and people are immediately jumping to the conclusion, oh, he's a mutant, get him out of here, and they toss some trash at him and everything like that. So it causes the X-Men to be called on to save this mutant from this potential mob. They show up, he starts running away, and it shows that, oh, this is Toad, and leads to the capture of Angel. And this is when the first time Wanda is like confronted with, because they don't know that's their father, but confronted with Magneto, who's torturing Angel because he's trying to get the X-Men to follow him, which they do by utilizing an extra ship that Toad used in order to, because he's on asteroid M, utilizing the ship Toad used to get back on Earth to do, because he's just like a wormy Igor type, like master, that kind of thing. And it's probably the worst interpretation of Toad I've seen, because it's like back in the olden days when Toad was created, he's supposed to be like just a twerpy gesture dress type of cheap henchman. Over time he's still a cheap henchman, but I read off like his stats. He's not like a complete moron. I think they retconned him a little bit, at least evolved him a bit, just to make sure he's like still competent to an extent. Like he knows how to hack computers, and of course in this he doesn't have his like signature tongue because he's a toad. He has like frog-like similarities. But I think my favorite interpretation of Toad in anything will be in X-Men Evolution. I don't know why. Well, I think like second best would be in the first X-Men movie. I wish Ray Park would reprise that role as Toad, because it shows off Toad not just being inept. I think, and of course, no, Toad showed up in X-Men Apocalypse just for a brief moment, but I don't really want to count that. But Toad in X-Men Evolution was fun. Sometimes he's fun to watch. He's, he provided like a good amount of comedic parts. So Wanda's kind of taken aback when like at this moment Magneto's shoving it in her face about how he saved her. So I expect of course he stopped the torture for her, but he doesn't want her interfering like that again. So the X-Men eventually showed up and saved Angel and destroyed asteroid M, while Magneto and his team escape. and they get off that big rock. Now they gotta deal with Namor when they figured out that Magneto is trying to recruit Namor in his cause, because Namor is also a mutant. As a matter of fact, he's part human, part mutant, part Atlantean. And of course, he assists Magneto, thinking like, oh, probably was fed a bit of lies from Magneto about the X-Men being a potential threat. So while Angel is scouting ahead, he's the first to bump into Namor, who can fly. I think that that is the wingtip. The wingtip on his ankles is his mutation to allow him to fly. But he also can swim and breathe in the water. He has Atlantean abilities too, so he can traverse the depths of the waters. But his human side can allow him to breathe air and walk on land like any normal person. I really want. Matter of fact, I was going over my review of the first Aquaman movie, which check it out on my YouTube channel. I just posted it up on the channel. I want eventually to cover the Aquaman Rebirth comic, and now I'm thinking about it, I really want to cover a Namor comic, because not many people really like give the Namor a time of day, but he's a very powerful character in his own right. It is not to be trifled with. When he bumps into Angel and they try to duke it out, just with one punch, he knocked Angel so far that the other X-Men were on a boat sailing towards his direction, see him flying, and like they have to pull off this maneuver where Beast had to hop. And this is before Beast got his blue skin, blue fur, and everything like that. It's long before that. He climbs on top of the mast and jumps, catches him, because he is just like he got his bell rocked. He is like, he just like never got hit that hard before. Because Namor has fought like the Hulk before. He doesn't win, but he can hold his own. That shows a level of strength that this dude is is on a whole nother tier. So they end up fighting Namor, but then things turn when like Namor and Magneto start fighting, because Magneto thinks, oh, he can just tell Namor what to do, and Namor is not having any of that. He's not weak will like some of your other Brotherhood. He's like, no, I'm a king. What the hell are you talking about? I'm supposed to be taking orders from you? And these two like start slugging it out, and it's like, it's a rare occasion that you actually see Magneto actually have to throw hands with somebody, because he's so used to like throwing metal around and things like that. And like, this dude can actually probably throw a punch, but it's just like, wow, like my mind was blown, like, oh my god, like Namor and Magneto just slugging it out. That is just like dope as hell. Oh my god. But eventually Magneto dips with his Brotherhood, and just out of sheer anger, and not only the fact that Magneto insulted him, but he ran away like a coward, and tried to order him, all that insolence. He just took down Magneto's little structure where he had this, big, this laser that amplify his magnetic powers. With his bare hands, he took that whole entire structure down and walked out of that, rubble like a boss. And just, without saying nothing to the X-Men, he just, flies off back into the waters. I was like, this dude was a badass. Yeah, so he's just like, yeah, just let him go. Like, this dude's on a whole nother tier that's like, you just leave it. Just leave it. Then, of course, Blob shows back up, and he remembers everything. Lures, he met up with Magneto, and is used to lure the X-Men out, and of course he ended up tangling with the X-Men, angered at the fact that uh, Professor Xavier messed with his mind. It was like he's an ass, but he's right in the fact that that was not cool. Like, you invaded my mind and made me forget something that was a part of me. Like, something that, like, I have every right to know about myself being a mutant, and you took that away from me. And and they admit, like, yeah, that wasn't cool, and we had no right taking that part from you, but you was like a danger to a lot of people. And that's when Magneto tips his hand, and it's like, oh, Magneto, Blob has them dead to rights. All of sending off these missiles, and Blob is like just so fed up because now Magneto's, it's like, oh, you turn your back on me just like everybody else. So he took the full blunt of all those missiles into his like body fat, and without so much as a scratch, and everybody just in awe of it, like, oh my god. So Blob, just doesn't want nothing to do with either Magneto or the X-Men. He just want to be left alone. And Cyclops is like, just leave him be. This is like probably the best we can hope, where it's like we'll just have like a mutual understanding of just leave each other alone. And then at this point, you have Beast here having like a crisis of faith in what Xavier's belief in, where Xavier is away for a bit and Cyclops is taking over, and he's kind of like on edge because now it's the first time he actually had to take the weight of leadership on his own without any type of guidance, and everybody's kind of feeling that because he's kind of snippy a bit. And Beast is like on edge because no matter what he does, people are still not what they do. People still look at him like freaks and ungrateful and everything like that. And so he pretty much kind of like had it up to here. I guess like all the adventures they've been going on so far, I think it's taking its toll. And pretty much I think everybody needs like a kind of like a breather, because they're constantly training, and or if they're not like on an adventure, they're constantly training. They probably need like a reprieve a bit. And this, here you get a little snippet of these two, like Cyclops and Jean, obviously having feelings for each other, but neither one doesn't want to speak up about it. But more so with like Scott, but he's thinking it on the side of like, I'm her superior, I'm her team leader, it would be inappropriate, I don't want to feel like I'm taking advantage, blah blah blah, even though like I'm head over heels with this girl, and she feels the same way, but neither one wanted to admit it. But here it's like after Beast and Iceman save a kid who is stuck on a roof, the people down below, like ungrateful, or at least not treat them like the heroes that they are, starts like throwing stuff at them, calling them muties and everything like that. That aside, I want to take a moment to point out, I know it's the 90s and it would be right on brand for Iceman to probably be like a sneakerhead, want to buy some brand new shoes and stuff like that. But look how big and dumb these shoes look. Hold on a second. Look how big and dumb these shoes look. And his feet aren't that freaking big. Unless he was buying them for Beast, but no shoes are that freaking huge. Realistically. I was like, wow, God, it's so... I guess they wasn't really worried about it. It's like, just draw some shoes. They get the point, kind of thing. I was like, oh, God. So Hank just fed up and just tired and for just being treated like an outcast and unappreciated, he quits and he decides, very akin to like a Peter Parker situation, decides to go into pro wrestling to get some money. And he does well until he runs into this other, turns out to be like a mutant, but he doesn't know that just yet, but he surmised it might be, where this guy has a power where he's kind of like can't be touched. You can't make physical contact with this guy. Like it's some kind of 1 to 2 inch barrier near him where you can't really land anything on him. And Beast ends up losing because he just cannot land a blow. And this guy ends up getting recruited by the illusionist guy in the Brotherhood. It's like, you want to work for Magneto, you gotta prove yourself. So he's instructed to stop the X-Men, but they're having a tough time dealing with this guy until Beast shows back up in the mansion, cobbles together some kind of invention, this gun, where it actually increases his powers. Now the team is freaking out. It's like, Beast, it's like, what are you doing? It's like, why would you give him more power? He's already was trouble enough. Like, are you losing it? But Cyclops is like, no, I trust Hank. Let's see where this goes. And because of this guy's power, it's kind of like a Midas touch situation. Now his power is amplified to a point where now he can't like touch anything at this point. And he's trying to grab like a burger, but it just he unwillingly force pushes it away, and now he's gonna starve to, he's freaking out like, oh my god, I'm gonna starve to death. I can't touch anything. Please, make my powers normal again. And so he promises he won't join the Brotherhood or interfere with the X-Men ever again. So he promises, and so Beast returned his powers back to normal, and this is the last we see of him. But this is kind of thing that's kind of remind Beast of the importance he has on the team and why they're doing what they're doing, and that kind of thing. Here is where we finally gets, every once in a while the X-Men run into other people from the superhero community. This issue is one issue where they actually run into the Avengers, like the OG Avengers. And it was on this escapade where Professor Xavier is dealing with this guy who just calls himself Lucifer, but he's not the actual devil or even Mephisto. But it's a villain who was the cause of Xavier's paralysis in the last time they tangled with each other. And so, having like a personal grudge, he wants to take point on this and have the X-Men hang back and not have anybody interfere. And so he ends up getting captured by Lucifer, who is working for some mysterious entities, who's planning, his body's connected to this potential explosive device that might erupt in the area around them. And so Avengers was showing up for like a potential, they think there's a potential threat nearby. So like they both kind of get the same kind of inkling. And so the Xavier explains to his X-Men, like, we can't allow the Avengers to interfere, keep them away while I deal with this. So this is where you get your gratuitous like superhero on superhero fight, which is always dumb in my opinion. But they hold their own And this won't be the first time when the Avengers and X-Men fight each other. This is just on like a smaller scale compared to AVX back in the day, in the mid 2000s. But in all honesty, the Avengers could easily kind of body the X-Men. And of course, eventually, Beast will end up joining the X-Men in the future, or at least on multiple occasions, as well as Wolverine, and Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver, and Rogue. Yeah, quite a few times that the certain members of the X-Men joined the Avengers. And of course, they all put a stop to it. And, Professor Xavier, notifies the Avengers like, "Hey, don't worry, we got this." And of course, they decide to like, okay, we'll leave it to it, but like maybe next time we meet, it'd be a little bit more friendly terms. But yeah, like I think it was unnecessary for this, fight. It could have easily like it would have been fun to see like the OG X-Men and OG Avengers team up to deal with this guy. But Xavier got this, and he mentally nullified Lucifer to like to fall, get him to fall unconscious, so he can work on the device on his chest, so that way he won't get seriously hurt. Because once he's seriously hurt, it causes the device to go off, send a signal to a device that causes a massive explosion. So they neutralize that. And now that the machinations of Lucifer's bosses are angry with this guy for failing his duty, Xavier is like, let's leave him, because like it's not. He comes to peace with the fact that it's not in me to like cause serious harm to people, despite how much they hurt me. But I was gonna leave you to your own comeuppings, and that will make us square. And then we have the team meet up with Kazar, who's pretty much like the Tarzan of the Marvel Universe, and his pet saber-toothed tiger. And they suspect he's potentially like a mutant when they see him fighting a bunch of soldiers in Antarctica, which in the Marvel Universe connects to the Savage Land. And they end up going where the tribesman there ends up capturing Jean and Angel. And of course, in this issue, the beginning of this issue, Angel thinks like, oh, he might have feelings for Jean, but he comes to realize, later on, like, oh, she and Scott clearly have things for each other. He's the only person that kind of picked up on it. And so, and he's trying to get her to, use her powers to unbind them, but she says, oh, they dipped my ropes in pitch. This is kind of like an inky tar thing, and it's like prevents her from unbinding. And I call it cap because that's so freaking dumb. That's dumb. That was like a dumbest like reasoning of why her telekinetic powers can't unbind herself, because the kind of tar is dipped in. It's like, so it's such a lame excuse. It's like a tar or a pitch or whatever is like a telekinetic proof. But since his bindings weren't dipped in that substance, she eventually like undid it, and he saved both of them, while Scott and the others teamed up with Kazar to infiltrate the stronghold by these tribesmen. Hold on. Next thing. Second. And so they end up saving the two, and of course, Scott is just like over the moon with finding Jean. And I love like Warren's thought bubbles, uh, uh, like Jean, you're all right, thank heavens. Okay, too, psych, or haven't you noticed? And this is where like Warren just like, yeah, like I know these two clearly like each other. So they thank Kazar for his assistance, and they head back home. And Jean, meets up with Warren later to personally thank him for snapping her out of her, because she was like kind of before she undid his bindings, she was kind of like in shock, and she wanted to thank him for like snapping her out of it and stuff like that. He tells her, like, I know you have feelings for Scott. He might be a stick in the mud and kind of like stoic and all the other stuff, but trust me, he clearly feels the same way as you do. Give him time, he'll come around, that kind of thing. Then we go into like a 3-issue arc here, where the 90s TV show kind of borrowed this kind of story a bit. They gotta have borrowed it. I don't know which one came first, but I imagine the comic had to come first, where we get the introduction of the unstoppable Juggernaut. And when Xavier tells the tale of his origins to his students about what's coming, as he's trying to tell them what's coming and how prepared they should be and how scared they probably should be, he has to give them a lowdown of his backstory. And of course, Xavier has a son named call him Legion, but I forgot his real name. But in this little picture, he kind of looks somewhat similar to his son when he was younger with hair. So it's kind of like, oh wow, he kind of does look like Legion in this kind of image. That was kind of funny. And of course, I'm glad they still kept his like exaggerated eyebrows. I just really like the exaggerated eyebrows of Professor Xavier. So his father was a scientist, and his partner was a guy named Marco. And the father died in an accident. The mother's totally, inconsolable. And so Marco, steps in to try to comfort her. This is when like, Xavier gets a bit of his powers creeping in, where he knows that this dude is lying because he could have saved his father, but he just, was a coward and ran away and didn't save him in the accident. So of course he, got close to the mom and realized, oh, like, your son needs a father in his life. I can be that guy for you. Of course, he wormed his way, moved into Xavier's mansion, and it's like, once all that, the whole marriage and everything like that is all signed, sealed, and done, all her riches he's using to build like a lab in his in this big mansion, which will end up turning into the X mansion eventually. And then she soon realized, this guy's a freaking creep, and he's like, stop bothering me, you nagging woman, blah blah blah. I'm trying to work here. It's like he's turned a complete asshole that she'd never seen before. And so then we meet young Cain Marco, Mark of Cain, Cain Marco. who is just like a kind of like Biff from Back to the Future, just like a complete bully. Um, Immediately he just doesn't like uh, Xavier, and eventually, the whole ordeal dealing with essentially, I would imagine, because maybe not physical abuse, but definitely like just uh emotional, possibly verbal abuse, uh uh and just like neglect, all that stuff was too much for her. And then eventually she probably like kind of deleted herself, it seems like, which now is just like leaving Xavier to the whims of the elder Marco. That's when King one day shows up in his lab, and it's like, why are you still entertaining this kid? He's just a chump. And of course, he doesn't want anything to do with his son. It's like, I'm working here. And King ended up blurting out that he pretty much just used, the mom just gained access to the Xavier riches. And of course, Xavier heard all that stuff, and he's trying to, cover up for, like trying to pretty much gaslight Xavier. It's like, oh, don't believe Kane. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I loved your mother. And then, of course, Kane, in the fit of rage, gather one of the chemicals, toss it to the ground, and it causes a massive explosion. And of course, Marco ends up saving both boys, but dies from the fire and like the smoke inhalation. And Xavier comment on the fact that it's probably like the one generous, decent thing he's probably ever done since I've known him to do. And he also reveals in his dying breath, like, don't let Kane know about your powers before he dies from his injuries. And it's like, not only this guy knows how, wicked his son is, but the fact that he knew that Xavier had powers. And it's like, I kind of wish they added in how that he knew. Because you see that when Xavier gets a little older, he goes to high school, he, uses gifts to like, like talk to girls and stuff like that, get inside the head to, not really, he's playing like fast and loose because he's like a teenager. He's like, and it's like, he might have just like, done something to let it slip a little bit, that he might know something that he should not be able to know. And that probably happened, but if you don't see it, then it doesn't happen. And of course, he's trying to, I don't know why Kane doesn't get arrested, because clearly, Xavier saw that he caused the explosion. But I guess, given the fact that there are only two people in their family alive, then it's like, I can't do that to him, because Xavier, is a decent at heart. So he's like, I can't do that to him. He's the only family I got left at this point. So I guess he doesn't rat him out, which to my chagrin, because like this dude, like clearly, is like completely ungrateful. Matter of fact, in current comics in the past few years, the relationship between Xavier and King Marco is, better. At least from this Juggernaut miniseries a couple of years ago reflected that they have like a decent enough relationship now. But one day, because long after they went to the university, Kane was giving Xavier a ride back to school since the summer was over, and he was joyriding and caused an accident, which you would think that would be the, oh wow, this is probably the moment he gets paralyzed, but no, this is not it. But now he's kind of like going through uh, different treatments in order to get better. So this dude is like completely like just void of any kind of compassion, doesn't even care, zero empathy at all. And then eventually they both end up joining the military during Vietnam. And on one of their scouting missions, they come across this temple of Sidorak. And of course, Sidorak is a godly being, or at least in that kind of deity, a particular deity that Dr. Strange often access his powers to, to bind people. I cast the crimson bands of Sidorak, and beseech a deity or entity in order to use a bit of their powers to do certain things in the real world. Cain access a particular ruby that Sidorak bestowed a good portion of his powers in, so anybody touches it, they become like a human juggernaut, like just a sheer force of power. So here Xavier admitted to Cain that he has mutant powers. He sensed something dark from this thing. Don't touch it. And of course, he's not listening. He touches it, and he transforms into like this massive muscular being. And this causes a cave-in, which Xavier tries to get Marco to follow him out, but he gets out, Cain doesn't. And Xavier kind of resigns to the conclusion that he must have died because nobody should have survived that. But he's wrong, and now Juggernaut is stomping, just like in the episode where you first meet the Juggernaut in the 90s show. He's stomping through, neighborhood and parks, roads, freeways, all this stuff, making his way back to the mansion to find and kill Xavier. And so now he, after explaining what his past and what's coming, he has to X-Men prepare for a fight. They put up all these kind of defenses and everything like that. Nothing is stopping this guy. He's plowing all right through them and knocking them all which way, left, up, right, center, all that stuff. None of the powers is like really making like a huge dent. Even incorporating a lot of the defenses of the Danger Room, nothing's really working. And when he finally reaches Xavier, Xavier's trying to apologize. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you in a cave, and I thought you died. And just like with Blob, Juggernaut points out, a fair point. He's an asshole, but a fair point. Like, you can use your powers to scan the rubble and find me. You could have done that, but you left me. And it's like, yep, point to Marco. He could have done that. But he's just kind of like, I imagine on some deep level, Xavier was probably relieved the fact that he's, resigned it as like, oh, it must have been fate or karma. So I'm relieved the fact that, deep down, I'm relieved the fact that, oh, this tormentor is just gone. And, and it's like, oh, is the universe like doing and not me? So I don't really have to worry. Instead of actually like, taking the initiative and try to look for him. So yeah, you can argue that deep down he's probably was relieved, so that's why he didn't bother to look. And you just kind of like making an excuse, saying like that must have been just karma or something. So the X-Men eventually show back up and then kind of blast a hole on the ground floor, beneath Marco's feet, and he's falling through this kind of pit, which only gives them a kind of temporary reprieve. So Jean and Xavier goes to Cerebro to try to amplify his powers because his helmet prevents any mental attacks. So while the others are trying to stall trying to stall the Juggernaut while the Cerebral, amplifies Xavier's powers in order to try to stop the Juggernaut any which way he can. He picks up the mind of the Human Torch, who's on like a car drive, nearby. He's passing by, and he, it's like, oh, another superhero, great. We need all the help we can get. And he's mentally projecting to Johnny Storm, like, because they know each other, they run in the same circles. So Johnny knows of Xavier, and it's like I need your help. It's an emergency. Can you come and follow my instructions? Hey, like, sure, like, you got it, man. What's up? It's like, flame on, and just like, because like, I'm surprised they didn't call it freaking Avengers too, because the Thor can throw hands with Juggernaut all day long. They just need to get the helmet off his freaking head so he can probably neutralize this guy. And so, his powers are amplified. So now Johnny shows up and like causes big blast of fire, which blinds Juggernaut temporarily to allow Angel to get that helmet off of him, and that's where Xavier uses mental powers to neutralize him finally. And that's pretty much like the end of at least this like arc of the Juggernaut story. But that was like a really fun arc. It's probably my favorite arc out of this entire 18-issue run. That was really good. Really, really good. Great art. And the art in this is fantastic, by the way, but that is my favorite art through that 3-issue little Juggernaut story. But then we come back to Magneto, who's training his Brotherhood. And this is when, this is the last moment with the Brotherhood, pretty much. At least this group of Brotherhood, where this entity called the Stranger, who Magneto summons thinking that he's another mutant, trying to incorporate more powerhouses, because other than maybe Pietro and Wanda, the others are just useless to him. They offer nothing. They just failure after failure after failure. And Blob, and Submariner, he couldn't count on them at all. And so the Strangers turns out not to be a mutant, but like possibly an alien to some respect. Let me say like the Stranger. Who is this guy really? He's a cosmic being. An amoral yet curious extraterrestrial scientist conducts his experiments on the oddities of the universe from his personal artificial laboratory world. Although he routinely concocts contradicting claims about his origins, the Stranger is Gestalt of gargantuan Eternals. So he's, I guess, like, it looks like he's like a Beyonder type. Yeah, he's a cosmic, being. So he's Magneto's trying to recruit him, but he's not interested in the squabbles between like mutants and humans and all the other stuff. He's above all that kind of stuff. This kind of irks that illusionist guy trying to attack him with his illusions. Doesn't work on this guy, and so he paralyzes that guy. It seemed like he turned him to stone. And he he holds out his hand towards Magneto. It's like, come with me, I'll show you I'll show you the world kind of situation. He doesn't say that exactly, but he reaches out his hand to Magneto to, like, follow him. And of course, Toad is such a twerp. He, jumps into the portal after Magneto. Master! uh hate totedness. But after the initial fight when they're trying to stop Magneto, Wanda and Pietro decides, like, we're done with this. Like, they don't want to be with Magneto anymore. We're tired of all this constant fighting. We just want to live in peace. We're going back home, but we're not joining the X-Men either. You say that. So this is pretty much the Brotherhood has pretty much disbanded, at least for a while. And despite Magneto's trying to break free of the Stranger's bindings, and despite the effort of the X-Men trying to save him, the Stranger ends up binding and taking away Toad and Magneto off-world. This is the last, for a while, we've seen on the both of them. Then we come to the last, arc here, where Xavier and the X-Men dealing with the Sentinels. Now, Xavier and Bolivar Trask are on this kind of like a news conference debating on the issues of mutants and humans and coexisting and stuff like that. And of course, Bolivar Trask is a complete bigot, where it's like, mutants are monstrosities and abominations. Well, he's in a debate with Xavier, pointing out that these are still people, and they're facing bigotry all over the world because of what they're born with, and isn't fair, isn't right. And it's like pretty much like ostracizing people with hazel eyes, because that is a mutation. Not many people have hazel eyes. That is, in a sense, a mutation. And it'd be the same thing to that. And it's not right, it's not fair. But then both of our Trask kind of got like sick of the debate. And then this fool literally takes out his little remote control and summons a few Sentinels to burst through the newsroom like an idiot, hurt down lots of people probably. But then, of course, just like with any AI in pop culture, it eventually turns on its master, and it's like, reasoning that, we are supposed to be guardians of humans, and the best way to guard humans is to enslave them and watch over them in that way. And so they took away Bolivar Trask, and the Xavier summons the X-Men, and one Sentinel is left by to watch over this group of humans. But then, because of some transmission signal interference, it topples over after the X-Men try to fight it down. Then using it to trace the homing beacon of where the the base of operations for these Sentinels will be, is at this tower, where they end up meeting, and Bolivar Trask couldn't believe that they have access to Master Mode, where they shouldn't have access to Master Mode, but they figured out how to gain access in this separate room where only he should have been able to get inside, because the Master Modes are responsible for creating Sentinels, while Mother Modes are responsible for creating Master Modes. It's just one bigger entity, bigger robot after another bigger robot. Is a rushing nesting doll of Sentinels. And so Bobby and Beast tries to make it sneak in, but the defenses are very high tech. So they end up getting captured, and want to know more about these mutants before they get exterminated. Massimo contracted Bolivar Trask to use this probing machine to pretty much an artificial psionic attack, trying to get inside uh uh Beast's mind. It also kind of like a truth serum type of situation, asking him all serious questions about his, past and everything like that, while the others are trying to make their way inside, which they end up getting captured eventually. But thanks to Xavier using his powers to temporarily shut down the machines, but only going to last 10 minutes, so they have to be quick and try to get Beast and Iceman out. And of course, Boulevard Trash doesn't want to do this. He tells Massimo, your guys, I'm the one who created you guys. You're supposed to protect humans and go after only the mutant menace as it. But, like I said, they overridden their previous protocols. And so Massimo explains to him, like, if you don't do what I say, I will use my power to eradicate any random nearby city until you do what I say. Humans and all. Even though it's like you subjugating humans would be just like a long version of what you just threatened him with. And that's what Boulevard knows. And he doesn't want to be a part of that, but he had to play along for a while until he figured out how to stop all this. But he asked Beast about his upbringing, and he's starting to understand, like, oh my God, this guy is just a guy. He was born a normal kid with like a nice, loving family. He was bullied because of what he looked like, and it was just harsh. And like now it's like, when faced with that, many, and maybe not all racist people, but a significant amount of people will see the life, if they get to see the life and the other spectrum of the person that they so-called hate, and see that they, are, even if they're not decent people, like you see with Blob or Magneto and the life they live and the atrocities they suffered in, you can't help but feel for them. And that's what Boulevard Trash is like. He's starting to feel empathy. It's like, oh my God, this kid, he's a decent person, a good student, and everything like that. But it's like, all that just seems like, I have no reason to hate a person like this, because he's just a human and he does good deeds with his powers. I want to pull this picture up because I have to talk about this. Why in this image of an actual young Hank McCoy, he looks like Peter Parker, but if Peter Parker was a little bit more buff before he got his powers, and he had bigger hands and feet. Other than that, he looked kind of like Peter Parker a bit. Then Xavier just decides to use his astral projection to keep Beast from telling anything about the Institute and the identity of him and the others. So he, uses powers to block any other further probes by the machine, and then it thinks like, oh, I can use my astral projection to try to mess with Massimo to stop it, but its defenses are too great and senses an attack. But he kind of sends out like a surge that forces Xavier back, and he has to rush back to his body before he becomes catatonic and temporarily knocks him out. He wakes up and he notices a military helicopter coming by, because after this big, construct came out of nowhere, of course the military has to be called, and he hails it down and uses them to realizing about the signal interference from the news studio, recreating that causes like a disruption in the facility, which also allows Cyclops and the others to get out, as they're trying to put Beast into the cage with them. But they had a split second to do it, and they managed to get out. At the same time, Boulevard Trash decides, like, you know what, I can't be a part of this. So he doesn't care about his life at this point. He just decides, I'm destroying this whole entire thing, destroying all the Sentinels that's trying to be created. Because once they're, once these things really get going, you can't stop it. So he's destroying everything, causes massive explosion to destroy Massimo and all the other Sentinels. And the X-Men, not realizing the change of mind that Boulevard Trask went through, they like, oh my god, this dude must have got caught up in this big explosion. So they escape with like essentially the day being saved, and not realizing it was Boulevard Trask that saved their lives. The man who is so adamant on his hatred towards mutants ends up saving them in the end. And that's Professor Xavier and the X-Men. Yeah, it's a good 18-issue run. It's a very cool story, but my favorite has to be, it usually has been like one adventure after another, except for a couple of arcs, the Juggernaut one being my favorite. But yeah, that is it. The next comic book review is gonna be like a Christmas themed one, a redo essentially of Batman Noel, because I did do a review on it in my earliest on-screen videos where I was trying to do step into comic book reviews and stuff like that, and I didn't get like a good, I was trying to get my footing on it. I didn't really feel too good on that video, and it sat in the list for a long time. But now I got a better setup, understanding, all this other stuff, and got a groove going. So now I want to do that as a redo. So I'm gonna go through Batman Noel for like a holiday theme review. So look forward to that. Also, in a few minutes, I want to do something special. I want to do a MCU movie trailer recap of all of the Marvel movies and most of the TV shows. I'm not gonna do every of the TV shows, but just to just like a recap of all of the MCU so far. And eventually I will do that for the DC sometime after Aquaman 2 comes out. Don't know when, but eventually. But that's what I want to do. So look forward to that in a little bit. But leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this story and what's your favorite X-Men comic. And then after Batman Noel, I will go into Marvel X-Men Onslaught event. So anyway, I will see you all soon. Take care.